I know a lot of the work we do is thankless as teachers, and I know that we were switching gears to make sure that teachers understand how respected their work is, how thankful we are for their work. And I also think that we need to extend the thank you to the mentors, to the policy leaders, to the administrators, to the folks who every single day, maybe your classroom isn't an actual classroom with students, but you have an educational space that impacts students. So thank you all so very much for your work from the bottom of my heart. It means a lot. And so before I get started, I have to share this with you. A couple weeks ago, it feels like just yesterday, but a couple weeks ago, all of the 2021 and the 2020 State Teachers of the Year were honored at the White House. Oh, thank you. And we were honored by Dr. Biden. And you can't tell now because I've been working on it and she's helped me a lot through this. I'll tell you how in just a second. But I have a decent amount of anxiety about getting in front of folks and speaking. It's a tough thing to navigate while you're the National Teacher of the Year, and this is the job. But I've been working through it. So it felt a little bit more intense when I was in the lawn, the south lawn of the White House, right behind the Rose Garden, looking at the Washington Monument, having my peers in front of me, the president, the First Lady, the Secretary of Education, and CNN Live transmitting to the United States and to Colombia, so no pressure. And then I'm doing my best to navigate it and get through it, but then I come to the part where I want to thank my school communities, both Crestwood Elementary and Booker Elementary, and my heart just explodes. And I stop, and I'm pausing, and the words are not coming out. And it felt like forever in front of all these beautiful people. And then all of a sudden, I feel this little tap, super gentle on my back and on my arm. And I look over, and it's Dr. Biden. And she whispered, "It's gonna be okay." And so what do? I stop, and I look at everybody, and I said, "Hey, Dr. Biden just said it's gonna be okay, so it's gonna be okay." And it was okay. I got through the rest of the speech, and it was beautiful. And then afterwards, we were told by the Secret Service, stay on stage. Don't move. So I'm listening to them. I'm following directions. And Dr. Biden's right next to me, and I go to her, and I say, "Thank you. You saved me." And she's a teacher. She still teaches at a community college. She could teach anywhere. She chooses to stay at a community college because she believes in what education can do for people, how it can transform our lives. And I said, "Thank you for saving me." And she stops and she goes, "I did not save you. You did not mean saving. The way you speak is beautiful, and you don't have to change a thing." And from that moment, my public speaking anxiety kind of started to get more manageable. And so she did what all teachers do, is she meets people where they're at, and she embraces them with love. And so what I thought about this moment was, what a beautiful metaphor for what it means to support education. It's both a physical and a metaphorical embrace. So today, as I remark about my year, about my vision for a holistic education, I'd like you to think about what you can do, what's within your capacity to embrace all teachers around you. Because we know what an impact teachers make on students. The number one determinant of how well a student does is their teacher. When Dr. Biden came to my school in May for my announcement, first of all, she surprised me. I had no idea she was going to be there. I was wondering why there was so much Secret Service at the school, but I didn't put two and two together until I saw her. And she has this quote that says that education doesn't just make us smarter, it makes us whole. And since I've heard her say that, I've kept that with me because I wonder about all the things that need to be put into place so that our students feel whole in their education, our families of our students feel whole in their education, and teachers, so that we all feel whole within education. And so before I dive into my vision for this next year, I want to center us on our why. Every day before I go into my classroom, I take a second and I think about, why am I here? And I think that this work is really important, and it's really important for us to understand every single day why we do the work that we do. Sometimes in the hustle and bustle, we can kind of forget. And having opportunities to be in person is something I'll never take it for granted again. So I'm going to take us through a little activity. I want to know your why for being in the educational spaces that you're in. Okay? Couple words, short sentence about what your why is. And we're going to waterfall it, which means that we're all going to answer at once. And you're going to whisper it the first time around. Okay? So I'm going to ask you, what is your why? And you're going to think a little bit. And then I'm going to count us back from 3 to 1. And then you're going to whisper it. So maybe the people next to you can hear them. Okay, y'all ready? All right, let's do it. 3, 2, 1, go. All right, now dig a little bit deeper and find the origin of your why. Where did that why come from? What's the sprout of that why? Okay, except for this time, I'm going to count us back, but you're going to say it loud enough for me to hear. Okay? So where did your why come from? Okay, 3, 2, 1, go. See, this is really beautiful, and this is one of the privileges that I get to hold, is I get to hold up this mirror to all of us across the country. And what I hear when I ask this question is families, my teacher, lineage, culture, learning, promise. And so these are things that I think that every day help me fill myself up with the courage and the energy and the strength to be able to meet my students and their families where they are. I love this quote about shining together. Why be a star when you can make a constellation? And I believe this is a true work of education. As teachers, what we try to cultivate within our classrooms are classrooms of safety and community, classrooms of exploration and curiosity and wonder, places of success. And the best way that we can do it is by being interconnected on our paths to becoming whatever it is that we dream of becoming. One of the other things that really inspires me is going back to this concept of being whole. What does it take for somebody to be whole? What does it take for someone to go through their educational journey and not feel like they're less than whole? For people of color, for first-generation migrants, this is the question of our lifetimes. Our parents and our families do their absolute best to make sure that we have all the promise, all the options and choices at our footsteps. But sometimes, the way education is laid out, we don't get to finish whole. And by being whole, I mean we get to hold on to all of our identities, and we're proud of our identities. And our identities solicit positive experiences for us in our schools. And so we all have this right that Dina Simmons was talking about, not just students, but their families and their teachers as well. So I'm going to share with you my story so that you can understand the origin of my why, so you can understand how my story reflects so many of my students. So I was born in Bogotá, Colombia, inside my home, safety, wonder, nurturing, all the things a child could ever ask for. Outside of my home, one of the longest and bloodiest civil wars in all of Latin America. And so just like so many of my students, my family had to make this really difficult decision to leave our home in order to pursue a more safe upbringing for my sisters and I. And so I have so much to be thankful for. My father, he looks so young right there and so handsome. My father was a musician, and he was born in New York. So that gave my sisters and I the accessibility of dual citizenship, which is not common within the Latinx narrative. And so it's something that I hold on as a propellant to be able to advocate and do the work of making sure that all children, whether they have mixed status homes, meaning that some folks in their house have documentation or nobody does, that they have the same abilities to navigate this world that we do. And my mom was a linguist and a human rights lawyer. So I had access to a lot of things that not everybody has access to. Nonetheless, when we moved to Chicago and we got there, the school that we were supposed to go to, my mom had a hard time going into the school and being able to register us. She didn't feel welcomed. She felt like this process and the system was very unknown to her and perhaps unsafe. You know, the irony of leaving your home country because it was unsafe, to think about putting your children in a place where they may be not just physically unsafe, but emotionally unsafe. For my mother, it was really important that my sisters and I stayed connected not only to Spanish, our first language, but also to our culture and by default, our family. You all have no idea the divides that happen between first-generation families. I've had to interpret and translate meetings between parents and their very own children because of the linguistic divides that have been created. And so my mom knew that that was important for our family. And so they went out and they advocated and they found a bilingual magnet program that would take in my sisters and I, even though there was no open spots. But my mom, I told you she's a lawyer, right? So my mom was like, no, we'll come in, we'll teach classes, my husband will do music classes, and I'll do Spanish classes, and voila. My sisters and I had also the privilege of loving to learn because our learning reflected who we are. I argue, though, that should not be a privilege and that everybody deserves to feel reflected and whole in their education. Everybody deserves to feel safe, and everybody deserves to feel this wonder, right? That's what connects kids to love learning, is to feel wonder in every single experience. And so while I'm so grateful that my parents did that really hard work, they put themselves at risk, this is why I'm a teacher, to fight every single day to make sure that students, right where they are, have access to joy and justice. And so one of the ways I like to explain what joy and justice is how I explain it to my students. We co-constructed a garden. It's a very large garden. It's a beautiful garden. You know, you'd more than not, you'd find me in the garden versus my actual classroom. We managed to teach all content area in the garden. And so what we would do at the beginning of the year is we would take a bunch of seeds and kind of sprawl them out in the garden. And I would ask my students to investigate what is inside that seed that helps that seed grow. That's it, just one question. And off they went to collaborate. They went to the library. They watched videos. They did all sorts of things to try to figure out what's inside the seed. They even put the seeds inside like really questionable substances. Like I would have done water, but you know, they did like the slime goo that anyway. So however they wanted to explore that question, they got to explore it. At the end of this unit, my students realized that everything the seed needs is already inside. It's kind of like a little suitcase, right? Seeds even have the capacity to perceive gravity, which if you're a wannabe poet like me, that's like, right? Seeds can perceive gravity. They know where to send the roots and where to send the shoots, and it's magical and also scientific. And so it leads way to a really nice metaphor that we're all seeds. We all have everything we need within us to grow, to sprout. And then I ask my students, well, what makes that seed, that plant thrive? And that's when we get into the soil composition, the sunlight, the water, the caretakers, both human and animal, that make sure that a plant goes through its entire life cycle. And so then my students understand, I have everything I need, but so much depends on my environment. And I have the power to take care of myself. That self-accountability is huge, right? But also, I have a way to connect with others by doing this work. And so my classroom is literally the backstage of a growth mindset, of students being able to investigate who they are with curiosity, have interdependent with their peers, and know that the better they do, the better their peers will do, right? And they know how to celebrate each other, which is really beautiful because even when they mess up, they know how to celebrate each other. In my classroom, we had a composting system, and above it was a poster that said, celebrate your successes, compost your failures. And so it's really nice when your students know how to celebrate mistakes, because then when you make a mistake, they're like, it's okay, you're still cool. So joyous is really about this idea of belonging. And this is a really complicated thing if we think about it. In order to belong, you have to know who you are. No small feat for a 3-year-old in preschool, right? Even a 12-year-old in 5th grade. You have to know who you are, and you have to know your role within a community and how that role is important. We know that the only way to truly cultivate that kind of sense of community is looking at strengths, knowing that every single person you meet has incredible strengths to offer. And so the only way that we do this moving forward is ensuring that we're centering everybody's identities and their possibilities. Now the just part is really tough. Joy you can see on people's faces. It's not the same as happiness, because happiness can be fleeting. Joy is internal and it's long-lasting because it comes from that deep sense of belonging. Just is harder to see, right? And it's harder to achieve, and it's just as important, pun intended. Just is about knowing that the systems that we're operating within aren't equitable, that we have to change things in order to make this happen. Sometimes people hear the word justice and they get a little scared. They think that the word is politically charged. And my job is to ensure that justice is really about creating a world where many worlds fit, and they fit in harmony with each other, meaning that nobody loses when we empower each other. Everybody wins. And so it's kind of switching our mindset. And it's also saying that justice isn't this big scary thing long down the road, that we have power today to enact things to make justice more of a reality, less of a hard thing to see in schools. And so a few of the ways that I found are easier to do, are lower lifts, are things that every single practitioner, no matter where you are, can do. The first is having these equity commitments, right? We can look at our data, we can ask people in our community. People in our community are able to tell us whether they feel welcomed or not, what could help them feel more welcome. One of the ways I like to do it is by doing equity walks. Basically, you're in a space, and you walk it as if you are somebody that does not find very much success or fulfillment. Maybe they're marginalized or ignored or excluded from that space. And you walk through that space as if you're that person. And you find ways to make it more engaging, more welcoming, so that it is, without any doubt, a place people want to be. So one of the ways I've done this is walking through the school as if I'm a parent who doesn't know English, but needs to go and engage in the school, right? Is there enough signage? Are the friendly faces greeting me right away? Do I have reassurance that this is a process that we're going to walk through together? Or do I immediately feel like I don't know the answers, I don't have the papers you need, and I'm going to be shut down, right? There's a big difference in how those things are perceived. The next is really talking about power. We all have so much power. Teachers have so much power. Decision makers have a lot of power. And it's about seeing our collective visions of power. Often, power is top down. And there's places for that, right? Decisions have to be made in a timely manner. We have budgets, et cetera, right? But in school spaces, when we have top-down models of power, there's very few people that get to shine that way. So my proposal is taking the top down and turning it side to side, making it horizontal ways of developing power, and being able to be accountable for that power without fear, right? We make mistakes, we move on. Hello, Congressman. I'm so excited to meet him. Anyway, sorry. So this idea of collective power makes everybody feel like they have voice because they actually do. And that's super important in schools. The next is this value of collaboration over compliance. I can try to get children to comply to things. It's really hard, and it's not good for them. Or I can co-create spaces of of collaboration with my students, right? One of the ways we do this is by looking at how we walk to and from our classroom. If you've ever been in an elementary school, you go to the cafeteria, you go to the playground, you go to the library, you go back. You do a lot of walking around campus. And teachers do a lot of counting heads because we want to make sure everybody gets there. And so instead of telling my students, you have to walk in a line, compliance, I ask them, how does nature move energy, right? And we look at wind currents and rivers and mama ducks and baby ducks, right? And I ask them, what do they notice? Students say they walk in a line. Energy usually is most efficiently carried through a line. Cool. Why? Well, then the students will go back to the mama duck and baby ducks, and they'll say, so that all the ducks that mama left with get to wherever they're going. So that if any of the ducks fall or get hurt, the other ducks see, and they can warn mama, and we can get them all together, right? So then with that lesson, my students understand this notion of collective wellness. My wellness and your wellness are interconnected. And the more that we contribute to interlocking them, the better that our students do, right? So basically, if you take one thing away from this, it's that a joyous and just educational framework is holistic and intentional, and it's informed 100% by student, family, and teacher voices. And so there's 5 pillars, because I don't expect everyone to build a garden in their educational space, although I would love if you all did that. I realize that that might not be very manageable, but the idea is to use the garden as a metaphor for what happens when we analyze and we're reflective about what educational spaces mean to our community. When we're intentional about how we designed them to ensure that the output, which is our students' success and our students' well-being, is at the forefront. So there's 5 pillars that I have noticed along my work for about 12 years that have helped me kind of compile and fit this in. A lot of this work is work that I see in so many classrooms and so many practitioners practice. And so they're reminders about how impactful they are. The first is that inclusion is a key and intentional element of design. You don't hope that you're including everybody. You plan backwards just like teachers do. You say, okay, families in Las Vegas have really tough work schedules. It's really hard to find a common time for all the families to come in. So let's move around the common time when we're building the garden, right? We're saying students with learning and thinking differences, with sensory needs. Okay, during the build day, let's make sure that we have a sensory station for the students in case they get overwhelmed. Families with young children who want to actually dig and do the hard work. Okay, let's make sure that we have childcare for them. Right? It's purposely putting things in place that make everybody feel welcomed, make everybody's strength shine. Next is that, I told you we're powerful, right? Teachers are super powerful, and we get to reframe our reality. That means that when things don't sit on us and fit well anymore, that we can push to change it. One of the things that I have never really felt so comfortable with is the term English language learner. Anybody that's learning a language will forever be learning that language. That's the way languages work. And so I feel that English language learner is a slight euphemism for students learning English regardless the cost, right? As a child who went through this, and I had to work really hard to remain bilingual and biliterate, really hard. I had to go to college, and I had to do a Spanish lit degree to make sure that I had the experience to really study my own language. And so one of the ways is looking at our students for their strengths. So instead of looking at our students as English language learners, let's look at them as linguistically gifted. Anybody, thank you. And you all have my full permission to use that word as much as you want, that phrase, linguistically gifted. Because instead of your journey being only to learn English, your journey is to maintain your gifts of your languages as far as you go, right? And so this means that our children get to be whole. Dr. Biden said it, not me. Education makes us whole. And so this is the story of Vanessa. All of my student stories that I'm going to share with you are stories that they have given me permission to retell with their picture and their real names because they're very proud of their stories. And don't worry, I asked their families too, and their families said yes also. So this is Vanessa. When I met her, she was in 3rd grade, and I get to loop with my students 3 years. And when I met her, she was coded as a 1 out of 6 on our English language learner scale, which meant that she had quite a bit to go to demonstrate that English proficiency. I spent a lot of time trying to get to know her and her family, and I learned that she spoke 4 languages. American Sign Language was her first language. Both of her parents are deaf. Tagalog with her mother, or her maternal grandmother, and Spanish with her paternal grandmother. And then she acquired English at school. I mean, the audacity to level her out of 1. She's linguistically gifted. And so she taught me that I can reframe my reality. And so I did, and I talked to her about this notion of calling us linguistically diverse. I shared my story about trying to hold on to my languages. And Vanessa ended up helping me teach our little ones their letter names and sounds by using American Sign Language. It's a multisensory thing. They all learned, and it was such a joy to see Vanessa flourish and teach her own schoolmates. The next pillar is intergenerational learning. We have to have spaces where aunts and uncles, grandmas, cousins, the whole community has a space to teach and show their gifts from within schools. For me as a child, it was super healing to have my parents in my education. And so I get to gift that forward to my students by creating spaces where families can come and go and they know that their gifts are recognized and celebrated. I believe we have to have an asset mindset, but one that's grounded in social justice. Again, this point where we all can exist in worlds where many worlds fit, where you don't have to reduce or dim down any part of who you are to be a part of spaces, where those spaces have done the work, the hard work, to make sure that they're ready to receive you. And honestly, that learning is holistic. Holistic design is the only way that we're going to meet both our students' social and emotional needs and their academic needs, because it's them who's driving the car. It's them who's guiding their learning. And so I'll tell you a little bit about the garden because it informs so much of my work, because the garden was only possible because so many people contributed. So many people volunteered, long hours, lots of muscle, to making sure that this garden was there so our students could thrive. We started our garden in this area of the school that was, unused areas, and we put it next to this fence where the students and their families walk to and from each day. And the purpose was to communicate to the families, this is a school that your child deserves. We have done the work to receive your children, and we're so happy that you are all here with us. And so it was really about centering our students and this common goal of making sure that our students thrived. We put up murals in the garden and then very quickly ran out of wall space and still started sprinkling murals throughout the whole school. And the purpose was that no matter where our students were on campus, no matter where their families were on campus, they could look up and know that who they were, their identities, their cultures, were not only reflected, but also celebrated. And so we built the garden very slowly over the course of 6-7 years, but we built it together. And each time we had a community build day, we shifted the times to make sure that we were diverse in who could participate, knowing that schedules are a very unique thing in Las Vegas, but also knowing that people have a lot of demands. And so if people weren't able to be there to help us, we still had other ways for them to engage. Every single community build day brought over 200 people. 200 people that were invested in making sure that this school was a place that children deserved to be at. And the kids did a lot of the work. They got to inform our design, and we had so much fun doing it. Collectively, we raised over $80,000, and every single penny went to ensuring that our students had a bit of joy and justice in every part of their day. We became the Gnomies, which are the garden gnomes, that are also homies. You smush the word together, you get Gnomies. We became the Gnomies, and this is an identity that has stuck with every single person that has been part of the garden. During trick-or-treating, I ran into one of my students, except for he had a mask and he was with all his cool high school friends, and he's like, Miss Earth? And I didn't know who it was because he had a mask on, and then he takes his mask off, and I said, Jory. He had grown about 4 feet since the last time I saw him. And he was with all his cool friends from high school, and he goes, it's me, you know me. And I can't tell you how happy that moment made me, because he didn't care if his friends thought he was cool or not. Apparently being a Gnomie makes you that cool. But it just goes to show the power of identity and building collective identities in school spaces. We did farmers markets. My students refused to charge people. Not very good entrepreneurs, but they called themselves farmerpreneurs. But the purpose was, if you didn't have cash on you, we still wanted you to have the vegetables, so take what you want. And if you want to come volunteer in the garden, we'd love to have you. They just intrinsically embodied what it meant to have that community care. We were able to put together 2 summer garden camps. When I polled my students to ask them how many of them had had opportunities to engage in summer learning, less than 1% of the entire student body had reported that they had access to summer camps. And so we made one. And our students became little student chefs, and they harvested, and they prepared lunches for all of their peers. And on the right-hand side, you see all of their cousins and uncles and parents who also came to help us in the garden. And so sometimes we were preparing close to 100 meals, but there was always enough to go around. And so I'll tell you quickly a story about the power of building spaces where everybody fits, where everybody shines. This is Haynes, and when I met Haynes, he had just arrived from the Philippines. He was very shy, but you could tell he was very eager to participate. And so I just kind of found him, and I embraced him, and we had an upcoming community day, and I translated the flyer into Tagalog, and I did my best. I hope it was accurately translated. That Saturday, he showed up with his Lolo, his grandfather, and they each had a shovel and a bag of okra seeds, and they, I know, he's so beautiful. And they helped us build the first layer of our adobe. It's kind of like an earth concrete bench, and they helped us make that first layer. Well, a couple months later, his sister, Hannah, showed up from the Philippines. But before Hannah had even left the Philippines, Haynes was so responsible. He got all of her Garden Know Me permission slips signed, so on her first week, she could participate in our garden club. And to just make the last layer of our adobe cob bench, and the next school year, Hyra, their youngest sister, joined us from the Philippines, and naturally, she fit in just like her brothers and sisters and her family into our garden club. Around January, I ran into the family at the grocery store, and this is the message. Can you see it in the back, or do you want me to read it? Okay. It said, Miss Earth, the reason that we wanted to join the garden club was because of how being surrounded around plants made us feel at home. In the Philippines, we were surrounded by green mountains and farms everywhere. As we grew up and went to middle and high school, the garden club was still something that meant a lot to us. It wasn't just a club, it was a family. And this sense of family was not just for the students. It was for the teachers. It was for the family members that came to help us build it. It was for our cafeteria workers that would come and help. This sense of family was for everybody. And so truly the garden became a space to equalize and dignify us all. And in case you're wondering, this is how I got my nickname, Miss Earth. My last name's Urtubey. And the kids just one day started calling me Miss Urtubey, and then just dropped the bay, and then I just became Miss Earth. And it's one of the most, I think, prestigious honors of my career.
Every time I seen her, she always had a smile, and you know how like plants come out of the earth, and she made the plants that we have in a garden come out of here. So they call her Miss Earth because she created the garden.
For my school community to reflect that love means the world to me. It still does, because I truly love them, and it's such a joy to have gotten to see them grow up in the garden. Okay, so my call to action, because I know that we're all in very different educational spaces, and your work really matters. It really matters. Whether you get to see children every single day or not, your work truly matters. And so if we can circle around a few calls of action that most of us are already doing, again, it's just a reminder of the impact. I think things will continue to look bright. The first is a trabajar, to work. If we want to know where the inequities lie, if we want to know where there's levers to fix things today, that we can do today, all we got to do is observe, ask, talk to folks, really make the commitment. One of the things I've been sharing around the country is if you work in a space where you get to inform teachers' spaces, we need to be talking to teachers. Ask them, are you thinking about staying next year? If not, what could I do to help you? Right? Having those really difficult conversations are so important. We just have to get to work, and we have to do that. Acknowledge that every single person labors for each other. And when we do build spaces that celebrate that kind of layer, a whole lot more of us can shine. Next is escuchar, to listen. As a teacher, I think this is one of the most difficult skills to help children develop. If you think about it, listening is really complicated. You have to know who you are and how these ideas are going to bounce around based on your own experiences. If that person has had very different experiences than you, then you have to throw in a whole lot of empathy. Right? Learning to listen is a very tough thing to do, and we have to engage in it. And we have to learn to listen to build trust. Families need to trust their education practitioners. They need to learn that we are willing and ready to collaborate and that we see their brilliance. You know, I've seen moms teach fraction lessons. I've seen cousins teach gravity and like the sun path, all these sorts of things. And none of these things would have been possible if we didn't open up the space, right? Everybody has something that contributes to a brighter and better society. And it's about giving people the space to feel comfortable enough to share that with us. A colaborar, we have to collaborate. We know the power of giving teachers autonomy so that they can collaborate with each other to bring forth projects, maybe like the garden, maybe different projects, but projects that will truly help their students increase their motivation, participation, and overall their learning. And this is a new one. Tenemos que abogar. We have to learn to advocate, and we have to learn to let teachers center that kind of learning, center that kind of information, that kind of response to the current situation. If you've ever seen a teacher take his or her class on a field trip, then you can see what a teacher's capable of. We can deal with any problem that you throw on us at a fly, keep all of the kids together and having fun. Everybody's going to have their lunch, and we can carry all the backpacks. Teachers can do all the things, but we need to respect their work enough to truly include them, holistically include them in the decision makings forward. You know, a lot of the time, this kind of work really has the backbone on courage. We need to make sure that we have networks around us so that when one person doesn't have the energy to have the courage to confront something, we know that the network and the community is. And we can kind of tap out and lean on each other. But I think the most important thing is to learn to celebrate. Learn to enjoy the process, enjoy the learning, and knowing that our students, each step they take forward is a step in the right direction. And so before I say goodbye, I'll leave you with the words of my mom. She came to the garden when it was all done and built, and she wore her best dress and very nice shoes, and it was a very dusty garden, but that's okay. The students were so proud to have her. They wanted to show off every single part of the garden, so my mom had a very busy day. And at the end of the day, I asked her what she thought. And I thought she was going to give me a quick casual, it's beautiful, or the kids are cute. But she took a long pause, and she looked around, and then she looked at me, and she said, mira, Julis, como si es posible cambiar. El mundo sí puede cambiar, y todos podemos ayudar a cambiarlo. Look how it is possible to change. The world can change, and we can all help it change. Thank you all so very much for having me today.